Hello, folks. It is I, Byron, here, doing a different type of video today that I've been actually working on for a little bit. This right here is going to be the Gundam Astraea progression line, or I guess timeline of the Gundam Astraea from the very first machine that started it all the way to where the Gundam Astraea ends up. And yeah, hopefully this little video actually does well. It's something I've been working on myself, a little personal project, and I do hope everybody watches this actually likes it. And with out of the way, let's go right in with the original Gundam itself. Going off with the original Gundam itself as also the progenitor to all subsequent Gundams in the Gundam 00 series, or basically any GN type or GN based machine. We have the O Gundam. This right here is the very first GN Drive mobile suit that Celestial Being ever created. Well, and also the first ever GN Drive based mobile suit in the entire series. Its resemblance to the RX-78, as it is basically, since it is the very first Gundam, uh, during the events of Double O, they actually decided to make it resemble the RX-78, as basically almost every Gundam series has their own, basically, RX-78 variation, with the O Gundam basically just being the RX-78, or the Grandpa Gundam, just with a GN drive. But since it is a prototype machine, it has gray and white color scheme, as it is still a prototype, with its base weaponry being a little bit more straightforward, with just a beam gun, beam saber, and a shield, just for the simplistics of it all, since it is still a prototype machine. And testing out whether or not the GN drive actually works, which during its testing type actually does work, and it has done a couple armor interventions. One of the intervention that it does do, what's it called, is the one that saved Setsuna during his younger years before he joined Celestial Being. Was the pilot being also the enemy of the series by the end of the series, which is Raven Thornberg, who saved Setsuna on a whim because he felt, what's it called, like, this kid might be special, which he was. And going from the original Gundam, so we have finally the one that we're talking about today, the Gundam Astraea, with the Gundam Astraea being a multi-purpose general type mobile suit, with powered by the other four GM drives. As when Celestial Bean made all the GM drives, there were five in total. One being the old Gundams, and the other four being directed with the other second generation Gundams. With the Gundam Astraea having one, and the Gundam Astraea being the bed test type for almost all the weaponry equipment that Celestial Being uses, and basically anybody else later down the line who uses GN type weaponry. With the Astraea testing some of the beam weaponry itself, like with GN beam rifle, testing out the GN launcher, which eventually gets developed later to the GN bazooka that the Virtue uses, and other machines as well later down the line. Uh, the GN proto sword that eventually gets developed to become the GN sword later down the line for the X as well, and more beam type weaponry equipment as well, and upgrading and also working on the different type of GN type. Uh, I guess you can call it the GN drive covers, where the Gundam Astrea uses the tri-prong covers. It does. They also tested out the cone shape ones that we would know more down the line with the third gen Gundam, specifically with Dynamis and Exia being the ones using them. Though during the testing of the Astraea, they had some problem with the cone type, so they reverted back to tri-prong type. But they eventually fixed those problems with the cone type, which we know were fixed because by the time third gen Gundams, the Exia and Dynamis are using those cone shape ones, and also Nodley and Virtue too as well. Curious, I think, is the only one that has a different shape cone, but I'm pretty sure also Curious too. What's it called? And overall, the Gundam Astraea is very nicely designed, very sharp and squared edges. I It's also one of my favorite machines of all time, and we all know this. I made my reviews. I already made a review for the model kit of it, and we already know how my bias for that one is. Now, going to the one I really fell in love with, it's also the reason why I'm actually making this video. We got the Gundam Astraea Type F, and then we'll get to the other version too. Was the Gundam Astraea Type F basically after the events of the book and whatnot, and the destruction of the original Meisters. What's it called? Gundam Stray gets and the other second generation Gundams plus the old Gundam gets sent to the Fairchild team, which is a shadow team of Celestial Beam that basically does covert operations along when main Celestial Beam does their missions, Fairchild team does their covert operations side by side Celestial Beam. and what's it called? And the Gundam Astraea gets deployed during these missions, with the Gundam Astraea basically being the same as the regular Astraea, with some modifications being the fact that it's been upgraded for modern times, as it is a 15-year-old mobile suit. Pretty sure that's the timeline wise, so I'm thinking about this. What's it called? It gets a new paint scheme, which is the red and maroon tab, which is also the main reason why I fell in love with this, because we have a gun that's red and it's very awesome. And its head gets and its face, well, the faceplate for it gets replaced as a knee sensor to mask its basically face, so people won't know it's a Gundam. Though, let's be honest, you're fighting other Gundams and you see this thing and you're fighting against it, and it's like, wait a minute, this is a Gundam, and then you're not going to survive that encounter regardless with Spawn, because the pilot for the Gundam Astraea Type F and the other Type F second gen Gundams is Spawn Spark, who is a very, very psychotic criminal who Social Being uses as a pilot. It's also one hell of a pilot. I'm going to say so myself. Like if I was going between him and Setsuna, who would win? Like season one, I think Fawn will still win. Season two, it'll be up in the air because they're both basically still fighting during the battles. Though I will say by the time of the movie, I want to say I'll still give it probably to Setsuna. Though Fawn still one hell of a pilot, but by the movie, I think Setsuna is really just is already in new type levels. Well, innovator, because Setsuna's an innovator by then. Was it Gundam Astraea having the basic same amount of loadout that it still has, but also adding a little bit more loadout as well, especially after the events of season one, with the Gundam Astraea having GN pistols and dynamist, GN rifle, GN shield, GN launcher with the and GN bazooka, beam sabers, and proto GN sword still all equipped. And by the time we get to, after the events of season one to season two, after destruction of Celestial Being, this is where we get the upgrade of the Astraea Type F with the Astraea Type F2, or the F2 type, where the Astraea swaps out all of its gen condensers or the hard points to now having the clear hard points for it, kind of like the XS, because they were able to scavenge whoever was left of Celestial Being, and basically were able to recover all the Exio parts and upgrade the Astraea Type F to the F2. It was now the F2 basically being much more stronger, upgraded with all the Exio parts. I'm pretty sure the previous unusable GN Vulcans on the forearms have been upgraded to be usable GN Vulcans. Though this is like a little bit more debate, because if we play the SDG generation cross rays, the Type F and the Type F2 are able to use the GN Vulcans. So I'm assuming during the upgrades between 15 years, they upgraded the Gundam Astraea Type F to use Vulcans, because and the original GN, which is funny because in the original manuals for the high grades, it shows that I can use them, but with the base Astraea, it doesn't have that. Though, if you look on the forums, they're not, because all these mod kits are the same as the GN Vulcan. So, assuming during one of the test beds for the Gundam Astraea, for the base Gundam Astraea, one of the test beds supposed to use the GN Vulcans on the forearms, and they weren't able to fully develop those until later down the line with the Exia and all that, and the Astraea just getting the upgrades later down the line. A little bit debates, but I do know with the cross rays, we do see the Type F and the Type F2. Well, the Type F2 definitely, but we see with the Type F is able to use them as well when it goes into a full on attack mode. So I'm gonna go with there that by the time the Type F gets upgraded, it's able to use GN Vulcans, and Type F2. It's just those with the extra part just upgrading it. With the and talking about the F2, the Gundam Astraea faceplate goes back to how it used to be with the regular face, no longer having E sensors. Though its V fin has been replaced, so it no longer has the shortened V fin. Now has that a very, very sleek design V crest, which I kind of do like a little bit better. And its weaponry is still the same. It still has the same weaponry loadout that it still uses, and also gains a new equipment since it's still using one of the GN drives by this point. Uh, Fawn hasn't lost the original GN drives yet after the events of season one, where Celestial Wing is destroyed. Fawn, the Fair and Shine team were able to recover, I think, 3 of the GN drives. Because they have the O Gundams, they were able to recover Curioses after they do battle, and they recover Nodlays. With Celestial Being, or the remnants of Celestial Being, still having Dynamists on their ship. And then Setsuna having the other one, since what's it called? Setsuna gets Setsuna's AMA MIA during this time. So Fairshine team still has 3. Celestial Being only has 1, with Setsuna having the other. And by the events of the before the events of season two, what's it called? Franchise team rejoined Celestial Being after they recovered. Get back the GN drives to all of them, and basically and well, they also lose all the second gen Gundams during the whole battle that happens between them. I will probably do a whole storyline of that because I do have SCG Generation Cross Race, and I might just go through an entire story of everything like that. And yeah, we'll go through that, and hopefully you guys enjoy that video when I do that one. So that one's going to be one of the longer form ones since it's basically just me going through the story of what happens. And basically, Fawn basically goes on his own, and Fawn ends up fighting and actually taking down the black type, the Type F black units, which the innovators were able to get the blueprints off the second generation Gundams. Were able to make their own with GN Drive towels instead of the original GN Drives. Fawn's able to defeat them, take them, and basically recalls them back into their Type F types color scheme, and basically pilots the Gundam Astraea Type F Black and recolors back to Type F, but was now with the GN Drive towel. Uh, and then still scavenging through Celestial Being both storage caches, he finds the Avalanche equipment, which is basically the Avalanche dash system that the Exia uses, and equips it to a Astraea Type F. So the Astraea Type F GN Drive Tower version becomes the Avalanche Astraea Type F, and he uses that during the majority of the battles during the events of Season 2 until the end where the Avalanche system gets destroyed and just goes back to regular Astraea Type F Tau. And that is the end for the Gundam Astraea. Well, technically, not the end, as we do have one more Gundam Astraea left. Well, technically, a couple. Two of them being what's called the Gundam Astraea Type F Black Type, which, as I mentioned before, during the events in between of season after the event season one and between before season two, the innovators basically get the blueprints of the second generation Gundams and make new ones the second generation Gundams and colors them all in black. That's why they're called the uh, second generation Type F black types because they're meant for covert black ops missions. What's it called? Fawn's able to fight them, beat them, and take them for himself and recolors them back into their original Fahrenheit color scheme, which I do like. What's it called? And now going with the final Gundam Astraea. This right here is the Gundam Astraea 2, which is a prototype machine, and as well, it's mainly in between before the Double O Gundam, as it is mainly to test out the twin drive system. So sadly, at this point, Celestial Being only has, I think, this is before Celestial Being gets the other GN drives, because I'm pretty sure, what's it called, because they're developing this. They only have the one GN drive, and they're using the GN condenser was recharged to try to stabilize and try to make the twin drive system work. So at this point, the Gundam Astraea 2 kind of looks like a little bit more like the Quanta than the Double O, because the way its backpack is designed is more kind of like how the Quanta gets developed later down the line, which I guess they fixed that problem. And overall, it's a pretty nice design. It's basically a combination of the torso bees kind of being a little bit like Dynamis, the rest of the arms and legs being more like the Double O, like we see later down the line. Was the head still being the Gundam Astraea with the face and the ears, just a little bit more Double O head, just with the Astraea face, with the two slits on what's on the face to make it more Gundam-esque, and the V fin still being a little bit more reminiscent. And but this time the color scheme is more in a grayish blue hue, as it is always with Celestial Being, and it's a little bit more long range weaponry with some still bladed weaponry, kind of like we see with the Gundam 007 swords with its blade sniper rifle that it uses, and it fights innovator created so when I mentioned before where the innovators basically made second generation Gundams, they also made third generation of they also made third gen copies of the third gen Gundams, except they color them in the ALOS colors, and these red and purple type, with their faces being like the four eyes ones that we see with the Jinxes. And Tyria is the one piloting this, and he fights him off. Though the team tells him not to fight and just try to stay hitting. Though that doesn't happen, so they end up doing a whole fight, and Tyria wins and destroys all the surgeon innovator Gundams. Uh, but at least gives a good test type as the Astraea 2 is able to defeat basically all the original four third gen Gundams once again proving the Astraea still being better than all of them. uh, I know overall, I actually do like it. I will say, the one thing I do hate about the Astraea 2, not design wise. I think when it came out, people were like a little bit like tired of like where all these are coming from and making these side stories. And it's not that bad. I think the thing I hate more about the Australia 2 is Bandai making it what's it called, a metal build. And you know how expensive metal builds are. I wanted one, but I was like, well, I'm not gonna get one. But though I do have the intent of making a custom one variant of the Australia 2, so that's gonna be a little bit while. I'm gonna have to gonna need to get myself another Gundam Astraea. Either that or just get myself an Astraea Type F. Get me another Double O Gundam. Maybe get myself a Dynamis at least for the torso piece. And then what's it called? And go from there and try to make the Gundam Astraea 2 custom. And then paint in that hueish blue white, that like hue blue white that's colored, and see from there. But with that away, that is the I guess what we call this, the timeline lore, or the Gundam Astraea line video. This right here was a project I have been working on for a while. It's something I'm still kind of in between, like making these videos and whatnot, because I'm still not used to doing this kind of thing. So I'm still used to doing my regular content, which is my reviews. But I just want to try this out and see how this goes. Hopefully, the video is a little bit good. It's not too much hectic. This wasn't a full in-depth, what's it called, of the Gundam Astraea and everything else. This is just more of a going from one to the other, like, oh, Gundam Astraea, Gundam Astraea Type F2, the Black Series, the Avalanche units, full weaponry, and then the Astraea 2. And only going a little bit on the lore and whatnot, just to see what's it called. And just see how this video turns out. What's it called? I do know there's a little bit more hectic, more jumping around than it should be. But if you did enjoy the video and watch it all to the end, I do appreciate it. I do plan on making more of these, not just with Gundam, with like other things too, like with power up abilities, like whatnot. Because like I finished, because right now my friend and I are kind of going through a Common Rider. We're just going through the Heisei era. We finished Kuga and Agido, and after we're done with at least a couple more, maybe like with another 7 more series, we're going to try to do like a top 10 of which series is our favorite. And I was like going with the armor designs. I was like, might make a like go through like the upgrades of Kuga's armor, Comrade Kuga's armor abilities where he upgrades, and then same thing with Agito with the other variants too. Uh, we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna try to do these kind of videos, and hopefully you guys like it. But with that out of the way, if you did enjoy the video, please consider dropping a like, comment, share, and subscribe, as I always do appreciate it. And as always, folks, as I Pyro and sign out, and I'll see you guys on the next one.